Maybe Dr. Chabiri could take the floor.
Okay.
Great. Could you share your screen if it's working fine?
All right. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh.
And I think now we can see your presentation also.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Ladi Mrs Chabiri from MVRI, and I will be speaking on the on the perception of PPR and the socioeconomic impact on household livelihood in Plateau State. So the topic of presentation is based on the result of a focus group discussion conducted to assess the impacts of PPR disease on household livelihood and its local management by farmers. This survey was conducted by some researchers, a team of researchers consisting of members of NILS and NVRI. So the survey has several research objectives, but principal to, sorry. Okay. The survey has a different research objective, which seems to handle the topic of our discourse this afternoon. Now, the survey was conducted, implemented in 20 villages of Plateau State from July to September 2021, and the survey targets the group of population of smallholder farmers. The 20 villages were sampled on the basis of 4 main criteria: geographical distribution, serology of results of PPR, availability of community health workers, and the balanced presentation of agricultural system. Sample participants were recruited with the help of local authorities. All participants involved in small ruminants on a smaller scale and in an extensive way. And in each of the villages, focus group discussions were conducted in a group of 10 males and 10 female, with male and female investigators interviewing the participants, discussing with the participants. Now, from the result of the survey, the first one I will be discussing in the perception of PPR disease. Now, participants mentioned a lot of disease condition affecting small ruminants in their communities, but in most cases, classical features of PPR allow for disease recognition despite the limitation of confirmatory diagnosis. The disease is called by different names in various communities such as Zao, Aloba, Chiwa, Mura. Some use their dialect to describe the disease as Apir, Napip, Ipiang, and so on. It's also a seasonal condition that affects both sheep and goats, severe in goats and sheep, and most fatal in younger animals than adults. The clinical signs observed by farmers in most of the communities were depression, loss of appetite, off-feed, emaciation, fever, nasal blockage, difficulty in breathing, sneezing and coughing, and so on. Now, the measures taken by the farmers, which will be the ex-ante mitigation I'll be talking about now as of the disease and the source of vaccine, measures taken by the farmers to protect their animals from getting infected include vaccination, prophylaxis, restriction of movement, and confinement. From the figure 1 showing the average score of action taken to prevent disease, you can see vaccination seems to have the highest score, average, followed by prophylaxis and confinement. Other less commonly reported measures were sanitation, intensive care, deworming, isolation, stop buying of meat, and so on. Now, from this figure, analysis was taken using the principal component analysis performed by the PP on the proportional pilings course displayed in figure 1. You will notice that the 2 main components, which is 1 and 2, makes up almost more than 50% of the score variance, and the group of participants can be distributed across 3 categories, depending on their preference to vaccination, prophylaxis using drugs and herbs, and then confinement. But on the first dimension, you can correlate it with the score of vaccination. There was a significant difference between values obtained by male and that obtained by female, which was tested by a t-test with a p-value of 0.02, which suggests that female ascribe higher scores to vaccination options on the average. Community animal health workers are the main source of vaccines. Among the 19 groups of participants that mentioned vaccination as a mitigating option, you find 16 mentioned that community animal health workers were the source of vaccines. In 2 other groups that mentioned several sources of vaccine, a professional piling was conducted to rank this source, and the cows, which is the community animal health workers, were attributed the highest score. Now, the perception on vaccine, from the themes of discussion, you find that several groups of participants did not even mention vaccination and were apparently not aware of the existence of these preventive options. Other groups made confusion between vaccines and treatment, while another group obtained an information on vaccination and from several channels, but they did not vaccinate. Now, this absence of vaccination, despite awareness, can be have several explanations. One, it could be that one group stated that they do not vaccinate because they don't have access to vaccines, and there's no proximity to vet services around. Farmers do not seem to be able to vaccinate these animals themselves. So this work has to be done by trained professionals, and those people are not in close proximity. Also, participants tend to trust alternative sources of prevention like prophylaxis with indigenous medicines, some herbs and local roots they use. Then finally, a group mentioned a negative experience due to vaccine. So this is to say that the lack of awareness, lack of access to vaccination or expertise to administer the vaccines, and the negative perception of vaccine seems to be the main obstacle on vaccination. Now, the next point is the ex-post mitigation on these particular small ruminant disease. That's the treatment options they conduct. Now, the assessment of the measure taken by farmers to limit the impact of disease during outbreak was done using professional filing. And from this figure, you will see that treatment and rapid sales seems to have was given the highest score. The treatment at 1%, and then the sales is 29%, while the next one is slaughter and eat, which had only 9%. The consumption of cell and sick animals was also widely reported. Now, 28 out of and 11 groups reported a value of sales price reduction in terms of disease outbreak for sick animals to be around 30 to 80% for healthy animals and 0 to 60% for sick animals respectively. They mentioned that the cows, that's the community animal health workers, the veterinarians, paraveterinarians, markets, and even herbalists and human pharmacists are the source of treatment they use. Now, other less reported actions were quality feeding, restriction of movement, isolation of animals, depopulation. Many of the farmers, once there's an outbreak, they run into selling their animals, both healthy and the sick affected animals, because of the devastating impact the death of the disease has on these animals. Now, from the principal component analysis was also carried on the average scores, and then you will find out that the two main dimensions explain more than 50 scores of variance, and group of participants could be differentiated mainly on the basis of their preference for treatment, rapid sales, and local remedies as strategies of treatment. Here, there is no significant difference between male and female responses. Now, a group of participants stated that while they don't eat the dead animals, they themselves, they could at times give it to other households who eat dead animals. Now, some group describe the local remedies they use as the grinded leaf of baobab, usually commonly referred to as garin kuka. Some use mahogany tree. And a group also expressed a feeling of helplessness in front of the disease outbreak, either because of no treatment was perceived to be efficient, and then the veterinary services were also not accessible. Then we move to the socioeconomic impact of this disease. Now, the socioeconomic impact of PPR on livelihoods of smallholder farmers will be better understood if we understand the purpose of small ruminant farming, the resources they use. Then we'll see the outputs and then the risks of that usually affect small ruminant farming. Now, from this particular figure, you will see I think I missed the figure that shows from this particular bar plot, you will see the representation of average score of purpose of small ruminant farming. Majority of them mention school fees in most of the groups, medical bills, manure, income, and then the less reported used is for assets, traditional cultural rights, farming, labor, and the rest that you can see from them. Now, the result from the average score from the figure 5, the result principal component analysis was also conducted, and you can see that based on the analysis, 2 dimensions, which together explain over 56% of the variance, shows that the group of participants seems to be distributed across categories of 1, manure production, festivities, occasional expenses such as schools, medical bills, and purchase of food, and then earning of income. On the first dimension, which explains almost 45% of the variance. The difference between male and female group is statistically significant based on the t-test and p-value of greater than 0.05, which suggests that an average female place more importance on using small ruminant as a way of saving in case of occasional expenses, mainly education, medication, and food purchase, while the male place more importance on using small ruminant as a way of just earning cash. They couldn't explain the reasons behind why they keep it, but they just said most of them, they just can't do without having cash. Now, the outputs on small ruminant farming and associated beneficiaries include live animals sold in market and to vendors and middlemen, then the live animals given as gift, then slaughtered animals for household consumption and sometimes given to family and friends. Then they sell the kits to people who intend to start the business. Then they use the manure as fertilizer in their farms, and then they use the skin to make traditional clothes. They also, the resources that is required by most of these farmers to start small ruminant farming include feed, labor, which is mainly household and relatives. Some few participants mentioned the higher labor, but majorly this is a business of a household. This is a household business where both male and female and even the children participating. They use the household. They will require household, which is housing, which is usually within the household and community. Also, water, which is sourced from the stream, boreholes, and ponds. Then they also require medicines, which they mentioned, they get supplies from cows, that's the community animal health workers, and then veterinarians, sometimes market, feed supplement, etc. Now, the risks affecting this business.
Sorry, Lady, if you could move quite quickly to the last results and conclusion to save some time.
Yes. Now, okay, let me skip the risks. Now, the impact of this disease to the communities based on our assessment and the results, you find out one, the impact is on the livelihood. Animals, they lose animals due to inavailability of them to sell. They lose their resources due to inavailability of them to sell in case of needs of essentials for paying school fees and medical bills. The ability of the household to derive an income is affected, and then the ability for them to get the manure for fertilizing their crops is also affected. Impact of PPR might be perceived differently by males than females, as the females tend to be affected as part of their livelihood is impacted, but for the male is just with respect to the income they get. Then prevention of PPR, an obstacle to increasing vaccination. You find out vaccination is an option for disease prevention by privileged participants. It is mentioned by half of the groups that their source of vaccine is cow. Now, it is encouraging to observe that it shows that vaccine reach large proportion of small ruminant, smallholder farmers. But the problem there, and in fact, it is expected that because the cows get the vaccines to them, it is expected to be of good qualities. But lack of awareness is also, in some parts of the communities, is a problem. So awareness campaign should focus on differences between preventive treatment and vaccination as curative treatment. Then access to veterinary services, particularly within the cows, seems to be a major determinant of vaccine uptake, and training of certified cows should be government priorities. Now, on the management of PPR outbreaks, you also find that along with attempts to treating sick animals, the rapid sales of sheep and goats is one of the major decisions most of the farmers take. And you find out that almost 31% of these sick goats are sold, while 49% are consumed. 28% of sheep are sold. Now, if you ask yourself, where do these sick animals get to? You'll find out that most of the time, in the process of this reducing the impact of the disease on the farm, on the livelihood, they sell it and they gain a little money so that they are not completely at loss. But in that process, they go away in spreading the infection to other communities, because people may come and buy them cheaply and take them to another community. In doing that, they lose their, they contaminate those environments. So while I'm scrolling through the conclusion and the recommendation, which because of time I may not be able to do, I wish to appreciate the guidance and support of my supervisor Alexis and Marion and Isoyama Ifendi and my colleague Matthew Bukat, and all the Lidiski team that took part in the survey. I also appreciate my host institute, the NVRI VOM, under the leadership of Dr. Mariam, without whom this work wouldn't have been possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lady. Sorry for having to rush you, even if you have like a lot of very interesting results and a lot of things to discuss. I think we will have to just wait until the end of all the presentations to discuss about the results, because maybe more things will come up with the next presentation. So if you could just stop sharing your presentation. And then I will just ask directly to Dr. Chukwudi to open her microphone and see if she can share her screen.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chabiri.
You're welcome.
I can see that there's a hand, but we will have to wait, unfortunately. But I will note that you wanted to take the floor, Dr. Samiullah. I will.
Yes. First of all, welcome to everyone. My name is Dr. Samiullah, yes, and current. Are you listening, sir?
Sorry, I was just saying we will wait until the end for the questions, because we are a bit rushed by time. Sorry if I was